One of the advantages of growing your own is that you have access to parts of the plant that you don't when you're buying it in a supermarket. There's often multiple harvests from each plant that maybe we wouldn't associate as harvests.
Yeah, they're actually some of my favourites, I think. What I like to call a sort of allotment forage.
When you look at a vegetable garden, on the whole, more plants are completely edible than not.
I picked every single bud off, and I do it as well with courgettes now, which I never used to do. Gave them really good water, and even just a week later, the plants were like 3 times the size, and they're starting to send a proper vine out.
As soon as it's produced a few cucumbers and they've ripened fully and produced seed, the plant's kind of done its job. On this week's episode, we're talking about harvest hacks.
From parts of the plant you may not have thought to eat, but you definitely should.
How to harvest, prune and plant to maximise your yields.
And how old a supermarket apple is by the time you buy it.
I'm Jamie Walton, otherwise known as Nettles and Petals.
And I'm Martha Swales of Marth's Kitchen Garden.
Welcome to Homegrown, the plant podcast for those who want to know more and grow more.
Your one-stop show for fascinating facts and practical advice from the incredible world of useful plants. Homegrown is brought to you by She Grows Veg, our go-to seed company for their beautiful range of heirloom veg seeds and flowers.
And as well as supporting the podcast, they're also offering our listeners 20% off the first order with code HOMEGROWN.
So head over to shegrowsveg.com and happy growing. All right, Jamie. I'm in trouble with my mug. It's a bit of condensation because I've gone for a little iced coffee today.
You have? That I got you.
Yes, that's very true. Thank you.
We didn't make a nice coffee. That would be quite indulgent.
Oh, I don't know. If I was at home, I went through this phase of I was on a job in the south of France and we had an excess of whipped cream.
As you do.
As you do. So every lunchtime I would insist that we all had coffees with like mountains of whipped cream on top.
Nice.
And so if you think making a coffee is indulgent, Jamie, you should have tried one of them. It was like, it was a dessert in a mug. Gorgeous.
Iced coffees aren't my thing.
Oh.
I like a hot coffee.
But you know, it's summertime now.
Even cold tea. Like I could have iced tea, like if it's like a peach iced tea or something like that.
Yeah.
But I would never have like a cold, hot beverage, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Like a cold version of a beverage that is usually hot is not my thing.
Fair enough. Actually, my favourite summer drink at the moment, I should try and do like a homemade version, but we get these like glow tea bags, which are like strawberry and cucumber maybe, I'm not sure.
Okay.
Anyway, we just put them in water in the fridge and have them cold with a bit of elderflower and ice. And honestly,
Does sound nice.
when I hand that out to people, they're out buying the tea bags. But I need to like work out how to do a homemade version. But
Bring some in next time.
I will. It is honestly the most refreshing drink. Very nice. Yeah, and you know, getting into July, starting to get more things like the courgettes coming in now.
Yeah, lots more to harvest now.
I had to re-sow my beans though, so they're still nowhere to be seen, like in terms of actually producing, which is kind of crazy at this time of year. But
I've got plenty coming on the bush beans, but not on my climbing.
yeah.
Most of those are kind of climbed the structures now, and they're flowering, but they haven't produced. But I've still got lots of other things to harvest, and I think that's kind of the topic of the episode.
Yes, exactly. So this week we're of course talking all about harvest hacks.
How to maximise your harvests.
How to maximise them, when to harvest things, how to pick things in order to produce more harvests. But not just that, just kind of general growing tips to make sure that you get more food at the end and you get food kind of all year round.
Yeah, definitely. And I think one of the advantages of growing your own is that you have access to parts of the plant that you don't when you're buying it in a supermarket. So you buy beetroot, you don't get the beetroot tops generally when you buy them in a supermarket, do you? You do when you grow your own. So there's often multiple harvests from each plant that maybe we wouldn't necessarily associate as harvests.
Yeah.
So some of that in this episode.
Yeah, they're actually some of my favourites, I think. What I like to call a sort of allotment forage.
Yeah.
I like to just go around. Even back when I had my first allotment, gosh, a long time ago now. I had my first allotment when I was 23. I was like such a plant nerd. Like I kept my allotment key on a little string around my neck and I'd go to work with it around my neck so that I could leave work having spent the whole day secretly looking up seeds and not working, and go straight to the allotment after work on the train and do all the watering and stuff. But I'd take my key and I'd keep it on a little string. But I just like to kind of like, you know, it might be like, oh, a coriander's flowering. What does the flower taste like? Or, oh, you know, this is bolted. Obviously, you can't eat every bit of every plant.
No.
So that's the bit that you need to get your head round. But recently, I've taken to, it's just finished now, but when all my celery bolted,
Yeah.
all of the outer leaves and stems were really bitter and horrible, obviously. But in the middle, it was producing this flower stalk. And I'd harvest the whole big old plant and broke off that middle stem. And you basically can peel it. And then what's inside is really tender and mild. And it's like a solid, cylindrical, really tender, mild bit of celery that like is very watery.
Quite substantial though. Like thistle is another one that does that too. And you mentioned that not every part of every plant is edible, but actually when you look at a vegetable garden, I'd say on the whole, more plants are completely edible than not, if you know.
Yeah.
So if you look at like courgette, you can eat the whole plant.
Yeah.
You might not want to, but you can.
Have you ever tried to make the courgette penne?
Penne, no.
I have.
I've seen it and I've mentioned it before, and I like the idea of it, but I'm not sure. I think you'd have to probably have really young leaves. You would have to peel them, chop them, and really do something special to make them tasty.
Well, so this is for people who don't know what we're talking about, which if you don't, totally fair enough. Basically, obviously the stems on a courgette leaf, not the main stem, but where the leaves are coming off, is hollow.
Yeah.
And so people say you can cut the stems off and then you take the stems and cut them into on a diagonal and they look like penne pasta.
Yeah.
Now that's because actually pumpkin leaves are something that's eaten like in lots of countries, and I think is actually quite tasty. I've never tried to cook the leaves, but I know there are recipes like that do that. But I tried to cook, I mean, maybe, you know, if anyone's done it and it hasn't ended up like this, let me know. But mine, I boiled them for a little bit, and when I took them out, they were the like sinewiest, chewiest, most horrible things. You'd maybe have to like peel every sinew out or cook them for a long time. I don't know.
Yeah.
If anyone's got any tips, let me know. But I guess the point is there's some bits that I really look forward to eating. There's some bits that like you can make use of, and there's some bits that aren't necessarily worth it. And it's good finding out what those things are.
I suppose if you were in a bind, if you really were desperate, it's good to know that you could eat it. But I think realistically, if you've got plenty of food, you're probably not going to eat courgette penne.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? There's a huge amount of edible plants in the world. And I think, you know, in a lot of indigenous knowledge, they're kind of categorized by plants you can eat in times of scarcity. Yeah. So like you wouldn't normally, but if you have to, this is edible.
Yeah, yeah. Like the scarcity route.
Yeah,
Mango
exactly.
Should we get into the show?
Let's do it. Seed of the week, Jamie.
This week, because of the theme of the episode, I've gone with kale. But not just your standard kale.
Tell me more.
1,000 head kale.
Ah, yes. Now, we talked a little bit in the July episode about July being a good month for sowing brassicas, particularly for sort of into the winter and for harvesting next year. When it comes to like perennials, we have talked a lot about perennial brassicas because, I mean, it's the one I'm kind of most obsessed with is having these like leafy kind of cabbage kale trees that you can just harvest whenever, and they can produce enormous leaves. I think 1,000 headed in particular produces very big leaves, but it also produces lots of kind of, they're not heads like a cabbage, but they have lots of clusters of leaves, so that's why they're called 1,000 headed, which means that you can harvest lots of kind of bunches of smaller kale from this big kale that then lives for a long time. Like with a lot of perennial kales, if they do start to flower, you need to pick them off to keep them kind of going. And that's, again, I guess a bit of a harvest hack because one, you can eat the shoots, and two, it means that your plant stays alive longer, which means more kale in the long run. So it's a good example of how knowing what to do with the plant will give you both more harvest and something that will produce more and for longer.
Yeah, I like kale. I like kale crisps.
Oh,
you made kale crisps before?
Yeah, well, I've done like curly kale, like roasted in the oven. If you put a little bit of brown sugar and salt on it, it's obviously very similar to seaweed that you'd get.
I haven't put brown sugar on it.
Well, you know when you get from the Chinese takeaway, you get seaweed.
Yeah.
I mean, it is cabbage, or it's like more like a leafy cabbage, a bit like more like a 1,000 headed kale leaf or a kind of collard green.
Yeah.
So they're like a loose leaf green, shredded up, deep fried.
Yeah.
And then sugar and salt is what makes it like the proper kind of seaweed experience.
Maybe the courgette penne might be good deep fried.
I don't think anything's going to save it. But yes, I think get your brassicas sowed. And then I tend to think it's good to kind of plant them out actually in August when you've got a bit more space, but you can start them in a 9 centimetre so they can get quite large before you plant them out.
Yeah.
If you haven't got room in the plot now.
Definitely. Yeah, I'd give it a go. And if you want to, you can get seed from She Grows Veg.
Indeed.
Time for fact or fiction, and it's not looking good for me at the moment.
13.9.
13.9. Going to take a bit of catching up, or you could be like I've been very charitable.
Oh, yes.
In the facts that I've chosen, just because I wanted to give the best facts to our listeners.
Yes, of course.
And in doing so, it's meant that I've given up a few points.
Oh, yes, that's exactly what's happened.
Yeah, so I think
I
to
see.
be charitable from your side, maybe we should do a decider.
A
Because we can
decider.
then maybe come up with a new section.
Okay.
Fact or fiction's been fun, but it's hard. It's hard to get things that you won't know. They're also interesting, and so maybe we could come up with a new segment to replace it.
Okay, here's the deal.
Okay.
If I get this right, I win.
Okay.
If I get this wrong, it's a draw.
Okay.
Come on, you're 4 points behind. I'd take that.
I think you're probably going to get it again because I've chosen something that was trying to be in keeping with the theme, harvesting, but also quite interesting, I think. So it's about onions.
Ooh, okay.
And when we're harvesting our onions. So the main point of this is to determine why it makes you cry. Why an
Right.
onion might make you cry.
Okay.
Yeah. A. Cutting an onion makes you cry because the cell walls of the onion contain microscopic crystalline structures made from calcium oxalate, the same compound that makes rhubarb toxic in large quantities. These structures shatter on cutting and become airborne as a defense against being eaten by animals, which are then breathed in, aggravating the sinuses and triggering the tear response.
Okay.
Or cutting an onion makes you cry because of a compound called synpropathylane S-oxide, which doesn't exist in the onion until the moment you cut it. Rupturing the cells releases two previously separated enzymes which react together to produce the volatile gas on contact with air. It evolved as a chemical defense against animals.
So it's either that when you cut it, it like creates this gas that kind of, I guess, is more in the air and might get in your eyes, versus the first one, which is that you cut it open and it releases, what was it, like crystals that like aggravate your...
Microscopic crystalline structures made from calcium oxalate, the same compound that makes rhubarb toxic.
I'm going to go with B.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why. I just feel like rather than it being something you breathe in that then makes your eyes hurt, the whole thing is like people put, well, it's the goggles. That's what I'm thinking about. You know, people sell the onion goggles and you cover your eyes and then your eyes don't hurt. Whereas if it was something you breathed in that made your eyes water, then the goggles wouldn't do anything. Mm-hmm. So that's my logic.
Okay. I'll let you know later in the show.
I guess one of the first things that I would say to people that are maybe new to growing veg, what I definitely did in the first couple of years was has these huge like gluts in the summer.
Yeah.
And then nothing really the rest of the year round.
Yeah.
And I know
Same.
this is something we've kind of touched on before, but like getting the hang of planting for the whole season is one of those things that does take a bit of getting used to. But actually, luckily, July is a good time to be thinking about that.
Yeah.
I mean, actually, throughout the year, because if you want things, you know, parsnips, for example, you actually have to sow them in spring to have them in the winter. But there's still lots of things now that you can sow for later on. But it's that idea of like, actually, the more I've grown and cooked and thought about what kind of, how I want to use foods, I would definitely say it's good to prioritise having a range of things that lasts.
Yeah.
Like pumpkins, sweet potatoes, garlic, or things that you can dry, like chilies, that you can then use dried beans all year round, as well as things that you can harvest all year round as well. That means you can kind of eat from your garden continuously, like maybe just little and often, rather than coming home with so much veg in August that you don't know what to do with it.
Yeah, yeah. It's also good to get your head around succession sowing and relay cropping as well, so that you've always got something to replace what comes out. And sometimes you can also plant something before the other thing comes out. in a gap in between, say, and as it starts to grow, once it needs the space, you're removing the other thing to give it the space. But it just gives you a bit of a head start.
It was a good example of something like that. I mean, obviously it's something Charles Dowding has done quite a lot, and I think he's actually just got a new book out, which is all about like companions and things that you can put together so that you can maximise your space.
A good one would be, I mean, you can't sow them now, but so I have a bed of lettuce with spring onions and marigolds generally as companions. And then once I harvest the spring onions that are in between, I then sow my parsnips. So I'll sow the parsnip seeds in the rows in between my lettuce, and then they take a while to germinate and a while to grow. So then by the time they've germinated and have started to grow and they need the space, you're removing the lettuce anyway, either because it's bolted or it depends on the lettuce variety. If it's a head lettuce, then you remove the whole head.
Yeah.
If it's a loose leaf, then you might just have the outer leaves. But after about 8 to 10 weeks, you replace them anyway. So then by the time the lettuce comes out, the parsnips can take over the space. So that's kind of a relay crop, as you would call it, because you planted something before the other thing's finished.
I definitely went through a phase of like experimenting with this, which I actually think I need to really bring back a bit more on the plot. But there were two that worked quite well. One was when I first put my sweet corn out, I'd then, because sweet corn's planted in a block, right?
Yeah.
So then I'd get radishes are a classic intercropping because they're quick and they produce in the time that the other plant is just starting to get established. But I actually sow it as a grid around the sweet corn. So imagine like a noughts and crosses board of radishes with sweet corn in the squares. And then, about 6 weeks in, you can pull out your radishes. The sweet corn are just starting to take off then.
Yeah.
And the other one was when I planted out broccoli, when it's small, I'd do, again, a grid around it of like rapini. So rapini is like a quick, it's sometimes called like 60 or even 30 day. And it's kind of like I actually think, because you can get leaf broccoli, it's actually a kind of turnip leaf.
Yeah.
It's really popular in like Italy. It's kind of like a bitter green. It's a classic in like a dish with orchetti, which is like little ear-shaped pasta. And you kind of just blanch it and then have it with chili and garlic. But it's quick, so it comes up. The plants are like much smaller than broccoli, and you kind of just cut them down, take all the tops, and then you can pull them out and your broccoli fills up the gap. So I think those little kind of, I also think they're quite fun. It's just quite satisfying to, I mean, it doesn't always work with everything. So you might be like, oh, I'll squeeze that in there, and then something will overgrow it. Yeah. At the moment, I sprinkled loads of like things around my tomatoes. I put in like various like flower seeds and some amaranth and things, and I can see the little seedlings under there. But the tomatoes have been growing so quickly in the kind of heat and rain and like weather we've had that it's kind of shaded them out. But it's always worth trying.
No, it is. And often at this time of the year, like a lot of the brassicas and things, they don't need full sun, and actually to have a little bit of shade can help them develop. And also they're not as exposed if there's other plants around them. Because if you think of a huge bed, a brassica needs a lot of space once it's fully grown. So you end up with like a plant and then a 2-foot gap. If you're just planting them in a bed with nothing else. But if you just remove, say you have a bed of, could be anything, but like beetroot or whatever the case may be, you can just remove a section of the beetroot, plant whatever you want in there. Yeah. And then you've still got the beetroot around it as kind of a defense as well. Yeah. From pests, from everything really, from wind. Yeah. So it's good to do rather than just having like a little seedling in a massive bed on its own, fully exposed to pests and the elements.
I like to think of it, it's like a little puzzle. I did one year a big, like a really early row of carrots right down the middle of a bed, and then planted tomatoes in on either side. And by the time the tomatoes were getting big, I could pull all the carrots out. And behind the tomatoes, I actually just chucked in a whole packet of parsley. Forgot it was kind of there, kind of semi in the shade. It's quite an open plot that this was on, so it's not completely in the dark. But by the end of the summer, tomatoes come out. There was like masses of parsley, which had been quite happily growing away behind the tomatoes. So
I do it in the polytunnel as well in the greenhouse, because you've got your taller plants growing like your tomatoes and other things. So towards the end of the season, I'll start some like chard and things off soon. And then I'll plant those underneath the plants in the polytunnel.
Yeah.
So then, as long as you keep them watered, they establish really well. They've got a little bit of shade from the taller plants above them. And then by the time you're taking out your tomatoes and your cucumbers and other things, they can just take over the space throughout the winter. And then you can put other things with them, such as your kind of other greens that are kind of winter hardy, and your lettuces and things like that. But it just means that you've got some really nice chard already established by the time you're taking your other things out.
Well, and also in a polytunnel that's got space, unlike my tiny greenhouse, you're taking off the leaves and obviously harvesting the lower tomatoes. So actually the stem's quite bare, leaving there enough light to kind of get into those plants underneath. It's very creative. I think it's a bit like cooking. Cooking is learning enough about the ingredients and the ways that you make dishes in order to start to rearrange things or be able to open a cupboard and go, oh, I'll put that together and see what happens. And I think gardening is the same after like a little while of getting the hang of maybe how much space a plant needs or how quickly it grows. Or even from the very beginning, you can just give it a go, mix things together, see what happens. And then it's like this knowledge that you keep adding to. But it is like a little puzzle. So I think I sound like such a geek. I hope though I'm talking to an audience that can relate to that experience.
It is, because you get used to your space as well, and then you work out, actually I could get an extra crop in there. And you start to really maximize the space that you have, and try and keep it full all year round. So it does. And I think even growing professionally, you get used to a space and you make it more and more productive, and you're measuring it because you're making note of everything that comes out and the value of it. So like in a kitchen garden for an estate, you're constantly, everything you're harvesting, you're accounting for.
Yeah.
And obviously the kitchen aren't necessarily paying for it, but they are on paper, so you can track how profitable the garden is. So you can see kind of, oh, actually I could get an extra crop in there. And then you start to look at each bed as like an income, I suppose. And trying to have multiple successions in each bed and multiple plants in each bed at any one time, and it's fun.
I'd really like that. I always, mean to be like, oh, I'm going to really keep a record of what I pick and whether it increases over time and all of this, but obviously I don't. Whereas the idea that it's kind of built into the structure of a garden, I kind of, I think I'd get quite addicted to kind of like, I love data. I'd be there pouring through my carrot yields and being like, okay. Yeah, that's just one way that you can think about harvesting and maximising output. But also, I do think growing variety over time, little and often, would be my absolute like top for it, especially in small gardens. Because otherwise, small space, you might end up with just loads of one thing. And I just think that's not worth it. I'd like to say it requires a little bit of planning, but actually, more importantly, it's just like continually sowing and thinking, oh, I'll just do something this month.
Yeah.
Keep going.
And maybe instead of having to plan too much, just make a record of what you've done.
Yeah.
Because then you can look back and think, actually, like that really worked.
Yeah.
So yeah.
There you go.
And then an extension of what we've just been talking about would be growing more cut and come again crops, especially if you have a small space.
Yeah.
Because then you're planting something and then you can keep harvesting it. So an example of that would be lettuce varieties. Not all lettuce varieties are cut and come again because some of them are head lettuces, like an iceberg, for example. But most loose leaf lettuces you can grow as essentially cut and come again, or just harvest the outer leaves and leave the heart to keep producing leaves.
Yeah.
And I keep those types of lettuces in the ground for about 10 weeks and probably harvest 3 to maybe even sometimes 5 leaves per week.
Yeah.
It's a lot of leaves. Compared to just one head of lettuce that you would have. So I would always go for a loose leaf lettuce, like a Lolla Rossa is my favourite, in a small space, even in a big space, because you're going to get so much more lettuce from that one plant than you would from an iceberg lettuce or something like that.
It is a really good tip. And I did a little patch in my dad's allotment last spring, 9 lettuces in half a square metre, which is like 50 centimetre squares, not a big space. And he's very good at keeping things watered. So it was growing really nicely when I went to kind of like check up on him. And we had like a mixture because I quite like an oak leaf as well. There's lots of different kind of loose-headed lettuces that you can do.
Yeah.
And if you get a mix, there's some really great mixes that come like with various different ones, or you can get a few different ones and mix them together. So in a square, I'd do like 9 lettuces, and then you've got this beautiful array of different leaves. And honestly, I picked this vat. It was like huge. And I think the idea that you don't get that nice crunchy heart is kind of false, because actually those tender leaves are still really crunchy. You can pick them away until you have really just quite a small amount of lettuce in the middle. So you get all those tender middle leaves. You're not just getting the rubbish outside ones that you don't want.
Yeah. And you have a nice variety of colours as well, which is really, really quite nice.
Yeah.
And in the end, you can still harvest that little heart. And I've got a quick tip actually about harvesting your lettuce. And this is again from commercial growing, because you're harvesting a lot of lettuce at any one time. So if you've got a loose leaf lettuce like that, you would basically like cup your hand around the heart of the plant that you want to keep, and then just push down firmly, and that removes all of the outer leaves
In one swift go.
One swift go, rather than plucking individual leaves. It takes a while. So yeah, you just literally push straight down. The leaves will be removed from the stem, and then you just got a big handful of lettuce to use, and the heart stays there and continues to grow.
And very satisfying too.
It is very satisfying. It is very satisfying. Yeah, it helps if you've had the plant in the ground for maybe a few weeks and you've harvested some of the outer leaves already.
Yeah.
Then you've got a little bit more of a gap from the plant where the leaves are growing from, and the
bit more solid
the
stem
soil
as well.
So then you've got more distance to push down. So it helps if you do that maybe 2 or 3 weeks in after already harvesting some of the lower leaves.
Well, that's also the point when it's starting to get biggest anyway, isn't it? So that you can harvest the most at once.
Super satisfying though.
I think that cut and come again is kind of really just about making leafy greens a continuous crop in the way that you might have with fruiting vegetables when you keep picking them.
Yeah.
And obviously applies as well. I mean, things like kale, chard. I mean, they're not, I wouldn't say it's exactly cut and come again, but the idea that you continuously pick the lower leaves and it will keep growing.
It'll keep producing.
Spinach as well, picking the leaves. So
celery, you don't have to harvest the whole celery. You can just harvest the outer leaves of celery, and it'll continue to produce.
I mean, it's interesting because actually the harvesting does promote additional growth, and it kind of almost relates to, I was seeing a thing about how in like various kind of ecological farming systems, they use grazers to basically make the grass lock away more carbon and activate like soil microorganisms, because when the grazers are kind of eating the grass, it makes the grass start growing quicker, and that creates more roots, it locks more carbon, and it has like a beneficial activation with soil microbes. So it's this kind of plants are always reacting to what you do. It's why when you prune something, it will make something grow somewhere else. They're kind of, a plant is almost like water kind of running through a root. If you shut off one root, it will start going another way. So if you pull off the leaves, it will start producing more. If you cut one bit, there'll be a shoot pops out somewhere, and kind of like getting the hang of that.
Yeah, you can use that to your advantage a lot of the time.
Exactly. Get some cut and come again lettuce in the garden. You could still time to sow some lettuce now though for some autumn harvest.
Well, you can have lettuce. You should have lettuce all year round.
Exactly, I should, but
because then you've got your ones that you can overwinter, like your Brighton greenhouse is one of my favourites, and there's all 4 seasons as well. That's another good.
Yeah, there's all year round.
All year round, yeah, it's all year round I think, rather than all 4 seasons.
Oh yeah, because there's Marvel of the 4 seasons.
That's it. Yeah. So they're good. You can just have them. You can grow them all year. As it says
that's what it says on the tin, yeah. We hope you're enjoying the podcast, and thank you so much to all of our regular listeners and our new listeners as well. We are loving kind of expanding this community and really enjoy reading all your messages. If you are enjoying the podcast, the best thing you can do is tell someone else who you think would enjoy it about it. So you can even pause the podcast now and share the link.
We very much appreciate it. You can leave a comment on any of the platforms that you are listening on. You can also subscribe. That helps. And
don't forget to check out the YouTube, because it really does bring to life the visual element of the things that we're talking about. So it's worth a watch. And we're in a very gorgeous setting. We're not just like with headphones on in a funny little booth somewhere with no vibes. We are in a gorgeous, cozy little house in Yorkshire. So come and see what it looks like.
Check it out.
The colour scheme was perfect for the podcast. Anyway, and you get to see our mugs. We've got matching ones today.
And Martha in shorts.
I won't even reveal Martha in shorts. Gosh, yeah, shorts have got shorter the longer I've been sitting here. And I won't tell you what the mugs look like this week, because if you want to find out, you'll have to watch on YouTube.
What a teaser.
Oh, I know. I think flowering veg, i.e. fruit,
Yeah. Yeah.
But in people's consciousness, vegetables, things like tomatoes, cucumbers, is a whole interesting arena of kind of edible plants and things that you can do in terms of harvesting. Because basically, I'm sure most people are aware of this, but I definitely had people be like, wow, I didn't know strawberry came from a flower.
Yeah.
Like, essentially, the way that things are categorized in a supermarket kind of separates you from how they grow. So once you are a gardener, you start to categorize things differently. Like, okay, these are fruiting vegetables. They've come from a flower. Aubergines, cucumbers, tomatoes, chilies,
Beans.
Most
things, really.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I was watching a video of someone talking about the word vegetable.
Yeah.
And how vegetables don't actually exist.
Yes. Well, like in it's like literally a legal definition in some places
for tax
isn't it?
purposes.
Yeah.
Yeah, because fruits were not taxable, but vegetables were. So it was a legal definition brought in. So hence why tomatoes are called vegetables when realistically they're fruits.
Yeah. Well, it's
All about
interesting,
money.
isn't it? Yeah. All about money, as things always are. And like, obviously, there's also a general consciousness between like sweet being fruit and savoury being veg. But yeah, botanically, it doesn't make any sense to talk about tomatoes being a vegetable, or indeed a vegetable being, I mean, a vegetable is botanically not a thing because a stem or a root or whatever, they're just parts of plants.
Yeah.
The thing that's interesting about flowers, obviously, is they are like the reproductive part of the plant. So it's a bit like if you're doing your dahlias and you want them to keep flowering, you're deadheading them because the plant produces flower in order to reproduce. If you disrupt the process, it's going to keep trying to do it. So there's a couple of things I think are useful in terms of flowering veg. The first is actually, do you tend to take flowers off? So early on in the process, when you want the plant to grow big and strong so that it can then produce more overall, there's often tips online about removing flowers.
Yeah, no, definitely. Because as you mentioned, once the plant's reproduced, if you allow, say, for example, like a cucumber to just grow without intervening whatsoever, as soon as it's produced a few cucumbers and they've ripened fully and produced seed, the plant's kind of done its job. It's reproduced.
Yeah.
So it won't have as much vigor because it doesn't need to. It doesn't need to continue to grow, really. So if you plant your cucumbers and you remove some of the early flowers, it promotes the plant to grow more and then obviously try and produce more flowers and more fruit. So I would remove a few. We've mentioned it on another episode, I think, but I'd remove a few of the first, say like 3 of the first flowers.
Yeah.
And then after that, once it's about maybe 2 foot tall, I'd remove every other flower.
This is cucumbers specifically that you're talking about.
Every other flower, which in the trials that I've done means that you end up with a longer lived plant.
Yeah.
And then I will use the umbrella technique that I've mentioned in another podcast, cut the top off when it reaches the top of the polytunnel and allow 2 side shoots to continue to grow and grow downwards.
Yeah.
And then with tomatoes, I do the same, well, not the same, but I take off the first few flowers that form when the plant's only maybe, I'd say, 1 foot tall, and then allow the plant to really grow up before letting it fruit. And so, yeah.
I think initially it's a bit painful to remove the flowers because you think, oh, I want to have the fruit sooner or the vegetable sooner. And so initially I used to see it and then not do it, but now I'm a total convert because you actually don't end up waiting much longer. A couple of weeks, but the strength of the plant is so much greater. So it's 2 different things we're kind of slightly talking about. The first one is when the plant is small, particularly if it's stressed or it's been in its pot for too long or the weather's been a bit funny, it will produce lots of flowers. This happens on things like courgettes, pumpkins, tomatoes, sometimes when they're struggling, cucumbers. And basically that's because the plant's like, I must reproduce as quickly as possible. And so it's putting all the energy into producing loads of flowers. If you leave it, the plant will always stay small and you won't get much fruit. So particularly this year, I'm doing a pumpkin archway and I planted my pumpkins out. The weather's been like hot and then dry and then, and so they had loads of tiny flowers on them. And you don't want it to even start investing energy in like maturing those. So I picked every single, there must have been like 10 little buds on these plants that were only about 10, 15 centimeters tall. I picked every single bud off and I do it as well with courgettes now, which I never used to do. and gave them really good water. And even just a week later, the plants were like 3 times the size and they're starting to send a proper vine out. The reason I did it particularly with those pumpkins is because I wanted the vines to be long enough to go over my archway.
Yeah.
Whereas I've had that experience in the past of planting them out. They just stay really stunted and small. They get 2 foot tall. They get 1 fruit on them. Whereas now I'm directing that energy right into like growing lots. So the plants get much bigger. Same with the cucumbers. I pick off maybe the first 3 or 4 in the greenhouse. And I should be doing it with my tomatoes, but I missed it. So now the tomato plants are probably half the size they should be because they were a bit stressed and I didn't pick the flowers off.
Yeah.
But it's then later on in the season that it comes to harvesting that you can also promote more fruits by picking. So there's like early on, you're picking the flowers off to direct the energy into growth. Later on in the season, you're picking the fruits off to make it flower more because you don't want it to like get to the end stage of having managed to like produce ripe seed.
Yeah. So you'd never let a cucumber plant produce a yellow cucumber because then it kind of will stop growing really. But it's interesting. I remember at times when I've grown too many, say, tomato plants or aubergine plants and they haven't been planted, they've just been left in pots. They will stay very, very small. They'll start to go really sad and yellow, but they will always produce fruit.
One tiny little tomato.
A couple of tomatoes that ripen or a little aubergine because it is just them being like, right, well, it's not looking good for me. So let's
go for it.
Let's reproduce as quick as possible and put all the energy that they have remaining into that couple of fruits.
Yeah. And I think the thing about fruiting vegetables is that we almost always harvest them immature.
Yeah.
So there's a few exceptions to that. But like a pumpkin, for example, it will set however many fruit. There's no point in like, unless you want to grow one giant pumpkin, there's not really, or there's way too many pumpkins on there. They take so long to ripen that you're not going to harvest a pumpkin to get it to flower again because there's just not, the gap between the flowering and the eventual harvest is so big that you wait for the vine to die and then you pick the fruits. You're not going, I'll pick my pumpkin so that I get more flowers. No. But with things that are quick and producing rapidly, you harvest them so that they kind of like produce more flowers. So pumpkins, you're kind of harvesting when they're ripe. But other things, you're picking courgettes when they're nowhere near the size that the plant wants them to be, cucumbers. And the way you can tell that is there's virtually no seed inside.
Yeah.
And if you leave them, obviously we've all grown, a 2 foot long courgette. That's the size of a mature fruit. And if you leave one big courgette on the plant, it won't produce any more courgettes because it's going, right, we're just growing this one huge courgette, we're maturing the seed, done. So even if you get back from holiday and there's a huge courgette and you don't really know whether you want to cook it or not, cut it off the plant because that's the only way. And then give your plant a good water, potentially give it a bit of a feed and it will get going again. But it's expended a huge amount of energy in producing this giant. Yeah. The same with cucumbers, which I think actually leads us on to another point in this arena of the fruiting vegetables, which is like the right time to harvest.
Yeah, well, cucumbers, the right time to harvest is when they're very immature. That's why they're still green when they would be yellow generally. Other things are like tomatoes, you can harvest those way before they ripen. Generally, you want to wait until they've passed the breaker stage. So they've got a tiny bit of colour. Yeah. So if they're a red variety, then they've got a tiny bit of red coming visible in the fruit. Then you can remove them at that point and they still will fully ripen off the plant on their own.
Well, that's what's really interesting about that stage in a tomato is the minute that it starts to change colour, it's no longer actually drawing from the plant in order to ripen. It is now a self-sufficient. The process has begun and it will not stop. No. So you can pick it off and it will ripen. Green tomatoes might change colour a bit, but they're never really fully ripen to a proper tomato. But I've definitely started doing this the last couple of years. The minute my tomatoes start to get that little bit of an orangey tinge, I'm picking them and they ripen into the most beautiful tomatoes. Whereas in the past, I'd leave them on and then slugs would eat them. So slugs don't tend to eat, they don't go for tomatoes until they're really ripe. And we've probably all had this, go to the allotment to pick your tomatoes and there's just slugs and snails all over them because you've left them too long. Picking them early and ripening them at home, you get them perfect and they haven't been attractive to slugs and snails at that point.
And that's true with a lot of fruit and veg and things, even berries and whatnot. But then with your tomatoes as well, it also helps if they're prone to fruit splitting. So inconsistent watering can lead to fruit splitting. So if you if they've been quite dry and then you give them heavy watering, it essentially pushes too much water into the fruit and they can split.
Same with carrots, of course.
Yeah. So then it prevents blossom end rot as well.
Yeah.
So having them taken off the plant when they've just passed the breaker stage is really useful. There are arguments to say that leaving them on to fully ripen on the plant, sun-ripened tomatoes, taste a little bit better. I've done trials, the taste tests, and there isn't a noticeable difference, in my opinion.
Well, and you can sun ripen them on a windowsill.
Yeah.
I still think, especially if you get them when they are like that kind of pale orange, they are actually really on the way to ripening.
Yeah.
But not leaving them so long that they've started to go squishy. It's that squishy point when it starts to be like game over for slugs and snails.
And splitting and things.
And splitting, yeah. I mean, with cucumbers as well, people, I think so often when people are new to growing veg, they leave things too long so they don't know when to harvest it. And then like peas, things like broad beans and cucumbers, cucumbers become like much less crunchy and much more watery. And you can start to see, even when they just become like, they won't grow bigger, but they'll just start to go really rounder and then they'll start to go yellow. But even at the point where they start to go rounder, they're already kind of past their best in my mind. And with like peas and things, in commercial production, there's a tiny window when they harvest peas because the sugars, once they peak, will rapidly turn to starches.
Yes, yeah.
And if you don't pick your peas, it's better to pick a pea early and it be smaller than leave it too long and it be like a mealy.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, some you can obviously pick as Monge too as well. But yeah, don't leave them to become... I mean, it's nice sometimes to have the big round peas visually, but generally once they get to that stage, they're not as sweet.
Yeah. Monge 2 is a good example. Like keep harvesting and you'll get more flowers because they're still so immature. It's a real pick continuously in the same way that you deadhead sweet peas to get more flowers.
Yeah, and a lot of things obviously, like chefs prefer baby versions of everything really, so carrots and courgettes, and they always taste better at that stage when they're fully mature.
Definitely.
Another thing to keep in mind is to not forget the leaves of most plants.
Yes. Or indeed just various other bits of plants that we kind of touched on at the beginning of the episode.
Yeah. When I think about the edible parts of plants that we maybe overlook generally, a lot of them are leaves. So I mentioned beetroot leaves, for example, radish leaves, even though they're a little bit furry if you cook them up. You can even add them to a salad without cooking them, but radish leaves are edible too.
I tend to cook radish leaves. I chuck them in with any other greens. They're quite good in like noodle soups because they're a little bit like mustard greens because they are same family. And also just if I'm making like a big like spinach and feta pie, I'll use beetroot leaves, I'll use radish leaves, chard. It's all pretty interchangeable by the time you've added lots of lovely olive oil and cheese and garlic and onion and
really
wrapped in pastry.
Really no difference between chard and beetroot leaves.
In Beta vulgaris, they literally beetroot with bread for the root and chard is bread for the stem. It's like literally chard is basically leaf beet is the traditional name for it. But and carrot tops as well.
Carrot tops, great pesto. Yeah,
I did a lovely pesto, like a winter pesto. So December I made this. Parsley from the garden and carrot tops and then walnuts, olive oil, garlic, bit of parmesan. Really delicious.
Very nice.
It was very nice.
Fennel fronds are a big one.
Well, my very favourite, I know I mentioned celery earlier, but is probably one of my favourite treats in the whole garden is a bolted fennel stem. It is so satisfying to peel the outside, honestly. Like even just that is fun in itself. And I do think the garden is more of an all-round sensory experience. So it is the process of like snapping it off and sitting in the sun and like peeling the outer sort of skin off of the fennel stem. And then this beautiful crisp, like really mild. I just like munch my way through it. It's one of my favourite snacks. Obviously, ideally my fennel wouldn't bolt, but this is some that I'd left in the ground over the winter and I've left them to flower as well because fennel seeds and also for the pollinators. So snap a few stems off as well.
Just of the feeling of fennel fronds. As I go past the garden, I always run my hand through them. I think they smell great too.
You can't help, they're very tactile.
Yeah, they're very tactile, good for a sensory garden.
And actually, when we're talking about crispy kale, like crispy fennel fronds, like sometimes if I'm roasting fennel and I'll roast the the fronds as well, and they'll kind of go a bit crispy, and then they're nice.
Celery leaves, as in like you would usually use the stem of celery, wouldn't you? If you buy it from a shop, you wouldn't have any leaves on the actual plant generally.
They're really full of flavour. They're really good for drying and adding to like, like celery salts.
Celery salt, yeah.
Or even like the kind of flavour in a stock cube is overwhelmingly celery. You just don't really realise because we're so used to celery that's kind of, the stems are really mild now. But the real punchy flavour that kind of adds that like kind of umami base to a lot of things is a flavour that comes from the sort of more mature leafy bits of the celery.
Definitely. Sweet potato leaves.
Oh, love a sweet potato. Oh, my sweet potatoes this year. So I'm now in 3rd generation London sweet potato. So I've been saving sweet potatoes each year and then sprouting them and planting them. I got them out really late this year, but because they're like a short day crop that we've talked about before, they actually tend to start forming tubers like later on in the year. So I'm hoping, because the plants are quite big, but of course the great thing is that the leaves are edible. They're a completely different plant family to potatoes.
Yeah, courgette and squash leaves, we've already mentioned those, but edible.
Yeah.
Strawberry leaves is an interesting one. Most people don't realise that the strawberry leaves are more or less as nutritionally beneficial, if not more, than the fruit itself.
Well, that's like this whole, I mean, I've only ever seen it kind of made into tea, raspberry leaf tea, blackberry leaf tea, strawberry leaf tea. I've had a go at it actually, because I think you can kind of use it fresh, but I did like a sort of semi-fermented version where you kind of like mash it up and leave it for a few days, then dry it. And you can actually ferment it for like weeks, I think.
Yeah, I've just dried them.
Yeah.
I just dry them kind of passively, really.
I think it's that kind of process of you slightly macerate them and it kind of changed. They come out much more like, it was like almost like a kind of black tea.
Yeah.
It was cool. Like I would like to make more of those kind of teas as well.
Yeah, very, very good for you too, which is nice. And
grape leaves.
Grape leaves, yeah.
I love, and actually really interesting. So I've got a big grapevine. I was picking off some of the bunches in order to ripen the other grapes.
Yeah.
And the small green grapes. I mean, traditionally in sort of medieval period in the UK, verjuice was popular and it's still used in other places. It's like sour grape juice. But when I posted some pictures about it, some people messaged me about like in Iranian cuisine, apparently the little sour grapes are used. And it just makes you look at everything with new eyes and you're thinking, okay, like how do you kind of use that kind of sour flavour, in dishes rather than just like, because they look so beautiful, a green bunch of, like a really small green bunch of grapes.
Yeah.
And the leaves are just, I mean, I make stuffed vine leaves because you're having to cut bits off all the time anyway.
You may as well use them. Same with tomato leaves. We mentioned them before, but you're cutting them off anyway. So use them. I mean, you don't want to eat loads of them because they're in the nightshade family, but you can make a pesto sauces and things like that. And they're, as long as you don't eat loads and loads of them, you're good to go.
Yeah. I think little baby cucumbers as well are a great garnish. The reason I end up with so many of them is, when you're pinching out the side shoots on a cucumber in a greenhouse, when they're really going for it, they often have little baby cucumbers on by the time you're pinching out the side shoots and they've got little flowers on. I either just have them as a snack or like I do think they're very nice as a drinks garnish. Yeah. And also just like eating plants at different stages as well. So garlic's a really good example. You can sprout cloves in a little bowl of water and just use the greens after a couple of weeks. You can pull up green garlic, like almost like if I had leftover cloves, I would plant quite a few really close together and pull them up in early spring as like a big garlicky leek and then cook the whole thing.
Yeah.
Or later on, if you've planted hardneck garlic, you'll tend to get like a flower spike come out the top.
Definitely.
Using like green garlic in various forms, whether it's scapes or, early in the season. It's such a delicious flavour.
Scapes are a great additional harvest because you need to remove them so that the energy is drawn into the bulb rather than into flowering. But it's just they're kind of got like a subtle garlic flavour, haven't they, to add to dishes. It's really nice.
They're delicious.
You could do that with onion tops as well. Do you know, when you're growing your own, you have the onion tops. Generally, you wait until they fall over to harvest, but there's still some edible leaf there.
Well, I grow like sort of giant spring onions for that little gap when there's not a lot going on in late spring. I also plant out extra onion sets in autumn closer together. And then when they get to like big onion stage, almost like the ones that I feel like you see more in French supermarkets, but they're like quite a large bulb on them, but they've still got the green tops. Or like you do see like giant spring onions in the supermarket. And I think like they're a bit more special than a dried onion.
Yeah.
And because you get the tops, and you get to harvest it earlier. So I'm talking like April, May, I'll pull up my giant spring onions and it just feels like something substantial to harvest at a time of year when there's not very much else. So when it comes to raspberries and you're like trying to work out what ones you want to buy and how you're going to grow them and things, there's two different kinds. There's floricane or summer fruiting, and then primocane or autumn fruiting raspberries. Now, the main difference is summer fruiting raspberries, you plant the canes and they'll fruit in the second year. So the wood will not produce fruit until the second year. So you put your cane in, that first year it's growing. The second year, in the early summer, you'll get fruit.
Yeah.
They grow much taller and they tend to kind of like produce more. So, but you need to have kind of more space and be able to like hold the canes because they get bigger. And obviously you have to wait longer to harvest your fruit. Then autumn fruiting canes, they will fruit on the new canes they produce that year. So when you plant them out, what you usually do, you get like one cane with a raspberry, you plant it in the ground, you actually cut that one back, and then it will spend the rest of this summer kind of growing new canes that will then fruit that same autumn. So the plants are shorter, but they produce earlier.
Yeah.
I tend to go for autumn fruiting raspberries because I think they're a bit more manageable in terms of they don't really need any support, and you kind of just bung them in. I've put some new ones in on the allotment this year. I once gave my brother like one all gold raspberry cane, which is a yellow variety. I planted them on my first allotment in completely the wrong place and never got any raspberries. He stuck this one cane in the back garden. It turned into this huge like hedge that my nephews used to like be plucking beautiful raspberries off. So that was nice that at least someone got some raspberries. But yeah, I prefer the autumn fruiting ones because you can actually get them to fruit in the summer and the autumn. Traditionally, the advice is to cut all your canes down at the end of the year so that new canes come up the next year. But what you can actually do is cut half of the canes, or maybe like 2/3, leaving behind some of the canes from that year. Because what they'll actually do is the old canes will produce new shoots and will flower in summer. And then it will also produce new canes that will fruit in the autumn. Then at the end of that year, you cut down all the old ones, which will now die, the ones that have fruited twice.
Yeah.
And you cut down half of the new ones as well so that you continue this process. And raspberries just expand over time and they produce more and more canes each year until you have a nice little patch of them. But you need to make sure you do cut some of them down to promote new growth and keep the cycle kind of going, stop them getting too congested.
Yeah.
But it is nice because you get 2 harvests. And I think with raspberries, they have such a tiny harvest window. And actually this is a good point like about harvesting. You leave a raspberry too long on the plant by 2 days and you'll just find like a drip of dried jam on the end. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like once they're going, you need to be harvesting them every day. And so I prefer to have like 2 little harvests in a year than like nice. Maybe miss it. Because then even if, I don't know, I'm away or something,
for a couple of days,
I know that I'm going to have more fruit again in the year rather than being like, oh, that's it, the raspberries are done now.
And a quick tip, I suppose if you haven't grown raspberries before and you're going to, especially if you don't have a lot of space, just be careful where you plant them because, as you say, they will produce new canes and often a foot away from the others. So, you know, so you can get the I forget what they're called now, but they're essentially like a piece of metal that you push into the ground around them. I think it's roughly about, I'd say, 6 inches in depth. And that just prevents them spreading beyond the patch that you want to contain them in.
And actually, if you want to grow raspberries and you know someone who's got a patch, I bet they'll let you just pull out a few. It's literally, that's all a raspberry cane is. It's just one of the canes that's an offshoot that's popped up somewhere. Because they go underground roots that then send up kind of new lateral shoots.
But they can spread quite quickly. Especially, I suppose, if you've got an allotment next to somebody else who's got some raspberry canes, you've probably got some raspberry canes in yours. Yeah.
You got any fruit harvesting tips, Jamie?
One that springs to mind is maybe rhubarb. I mean, you wouldn't be harvesting rhubarb now. You'd be leaving them to gain energy for next year.
Yeah.
But when you are, don't ever cut them.
Yeah.
Instead, you pull them.
Yeah.
Which then promotes the plant to produce more stems because you pulled the whole stem out. If you cut them, it doesn't. And then actually that can cause disease in the plant too.
Well, you're leaving like a big exposed, I suppose,
yeah.
And actually when you pull out a rhubarb stem, you can see at the bottom, it tapers to just a kind of flat.
Yeah.
It's barely even kind of
No, it's kind of like a joint, isn't it?
Yeah.
When you pull it out, it's quite satisfying to pull it out as well. But then it just does mean that they will produce more rather than having the chance of getting disease. And also, once you cut it off, it literally will not produce any more in that section.
Interesting.
Yeah. So pull, don't cut rhubarb.
I've got a new rhubarb on the plot this year. Well, actually, Mum bought it for me last year, and I left it in a pot in the garden, and it died back completely. And I thought that is never coming back. And then I planted it out at the end of last year, and I have just been really trying to like keep it well watered and like mulching it a lot, and it has now started to establish into a really nice rhubarb. But obviously, I didn't harvest it this year, so that's the thing with a lot of fruit is, you know, you want to give it longevity, and so I'm just growing it as big as I can this year, so that next year it's nice and strong, so that I can start harvesting a few stems.
Yeah.
Of course, another thing, if you really want to have a different kind of harvest from a rhubarb, is you can force it. Have you ever forced rhubarb?
Yeah. Just essentially cover it and make sure it doesn't have access to any light, which will force it up, and you'll get earlier rhubarb and also sweeter rhubarb.
It's that beautiful pink rhubarb that you get in kind of March, basically.
Yeah.
I think actually in commercial cultivation, they literally grow crowns for 2 years, force them for the rhubarb, and then get rid of them.
Yeah.
But I think if you just force it like not every year and then like allow it to regrow, you'll be all right.
Force it once and then leave it to kind of draw more energy in over the course of the year, then, and don't force it again the year after. Usually, all right, you could probably force it every other year.
Yeah.
And it would still be okay. And obviously you can separate the crowns after 2 or 3 years as well.
Well, that's it. You get, you know, that's a whole nother thing with like increasing your harvest is just separating plants. And I mean, that's how I think we got the first rhubarb that I had on one of the first allotments is like, you know, someone was just walking around with a bucket of bits of rhubarb. They're like, do you want any? Because they had one that had grown so big. They've been, you know, splitting bits off of it because it's good for the plant that's left behind, because it's got more space and it kind of reinvigorates it, and it's good for like growing a new one. Same with like strawberries and things. You want to, if they've like got really congested, you want to actually take them out to give them space, don't you?
Yeah.
So I thought we'd just round off with some interesting things about commercial harvesting. Because, you know, it's always nice to take it out into the wider world. First off, Jamie, how old do you think a supermarket apple is by the time you buy it in the shops?
I'd like to think that it was maybe a few weeks old, but I'm imagining it's months.
6 to 12 months is how old an apple is by the time you buy it in the supermarket. When you go into the supermarket and pick up a packet of apples, they could be a year old.
That's pretty grim.
That's pretty grim, isn't it?
Yeah, and how do they manage to keep them that long?
Okay, so the whole like global apple supply chain, very complicated. Supermarkets, huge like storage warehouses, because they never want to run out of apples, right?
Yeah.
There is a tiny window. Obviously, apples are harvested in autumn, late summer through to autumn. So the only time of year you're going to get a British apple that is actually fresh is that time of year. And those are the only apples that won't have been put into a state of stasis, which actually prevents them from ever fulfilling their full like flavour and fragrance potential. So there is a reason why a homegrown apple tastes so much better than a supermarket apple. And that's because supermarket apples are harvested unripe, and then they are stored for 6 months to a year before they end up in the supermarket. And in order to prevent them from ripening, they're put into incredibly low oxygen environment. So, you know, oxygen is typically about 18% in the atmosphere. They're put into between 0.5 and 3% oxygen.
Wow.
And that's because apples are a living thing and they continue to kind of respire and ripen if they're left out. But if you remove oxygen, they can't respire, so they can't continue to ripen. And secondly, it's ethylene that makes them ripen as well. So as well as having a very low oxygen environment, they also introduce a gas called 1-methyl cyclopropene. And what that effectively does is it locks with the apple's ethylene receptors and it blocks them. So once you've taken the apples out of storage, you can't really restart the ripening process as it would have been if you harvested them ripe or you picked them and had them at home. So they'll never have their full fragrance flavour profile of a fresh apple. So, but people still buy them, and supermarkets want to make sure they're on offer all year round. So when you buy apples in the supermarket, you're essentially buying an old, underripe, not as flavoursome or fragrant apple as if you grow them at home.
Sad. On the same subject, did you know that baby carrots aren't actually baby carrots?
Okay.
They were invented in around 1986 by a farmer in California called Mike Urasek.
How do you invent a baby carrot?
Well, they're essentially misshapen carrots that are cut into sections and then put through rumblers to round off the edges. So they're not baby carrots in the sense that we would think of them. If you pull up a immature carrot in the garden, it's a little immature carrot.
Yeah.
Whereas these are essentially just chunks of carrot that have been processed. And they account for, I think, about 70% of the sales in the US are these little carrots.
Are you joking? Those watery sticks of misery are 70% of carrot sales in America.
That's pretty sad, isn't it? Just eat the wonky carrot.
Sorry, if anyone from America is listening, can you just confirm this? Because in the UK, like a few places might have them. Maybe a fast food restaurant will do it for an option for kids, or like a supermarket. We actually just often have cut sticks in a lot of supermarkets, but you do get the tumbled, like particularly watery, odd flavoured carrot sticks in a few supermarkets in the kind of like, you know, convenience section. But like 70% of carrots in America are those little watery. I was actually really shocked me, because I did buy a bag of them this year when I was like getting on a train somewhere, and they're so horrible. They're so horrible. Like, I don't think you should waste them. I think it's really good that they found a way to use them, except they obviously end up then getting like, they're always wet. They're always like in a plastic bag.
Yeah, skinless.
Like, just eat the wonky carrots.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of the carrot, the wonkiness of the carrot will go to waste.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I don't even know what you do with them. They're so not like a carrot. You just boil them, like you just tip them out and boil them, and then you have like
ever buying them to cook with them or anything. No. So I mean, they would be pretty grim, and they have to come in packets as well.
Yeah.
Whereas generally you would buy bunches of carrots, wouldn't you?
Let's grow more carrots. Let's
just eat the wonky ones.
Just eat the wonky
Nothing wrong
ones.
with a wonky one.
Yeah. I've got one final one for you then, in terms of harvesting, which is cranberries. You might know this already, but like cranberries are a bog plant.
Yeah.
And they, in commercial production, grow them in these kind of like sunken basins.
Yeah.
So that when they want to harvest them, cranberries are actually buoyant because they're hollow.
Yes, yeah.
So they just flood the bog and all the cranberries rise to the top, which is why you often sort of see cranberries like in water in harvest. I mean, say like this is like, you know, it's even in branding of big like cranberry juice companies.
Yeah.
You know, there's like water involved, and that's because they flood the bogs, and then they just scoop up all of the cranberries off the surface of the water to save having to pick them by hand.
I've heard, the only reason that I know that that's the way in which they do it is because of this terrifying story I heard of cranberry spiders, and those that are involved in the harvesting process being covered in spiders because they're wading through these bogs.
And the spiders are trying to run away from the water.
Yeah, well, they're trying to find a way out of the water, and if you're stood there, you're a way out of the water.
Oh my goodness, to get covered in big spiders in a cranberry bog.
Not my idea of a fun job.
No. Interestingly, apparently about 85% of cranberries are water harvested, and those are the ones that are used for like juices, jams and that kind of thing. And then like the premium, not overripe or squishy ones have to be hand harvested. So if you buy a bag of like whole cranberries, someone's gone through with a special little device that has like forks on it and scooped the cranberries actually off the plants, which is obviously much more labour intensive.
The spiders. This is the end of Fact or Fiction.
So I get this right, and I'm the ultimate Fact or Fiction champion.
Yeah.
And I get it wrong, and we call it a draw.
Yeah, doesn't sound that great now. I think about it. So it was about onions.
Yeah.
And why they make you cry. So A was cutting an onion makes you cry because the cell walls of an onion contain microscopic crystalline structures made from calcium oxalate, the same compound that makes rhubarb toxic in large quantities, particularly the leaves.
Yeah.
These shatter on cutting and become airborne as a defense against animals eating them, which then breathed in to aggravate the sinuses, and that triggers the tear response. Or B, cutting an onion makes you cry because of a compound called synpropylethyl S oxide. I've probably made a hash of that, which doesn't exist in the onion until the moment that you cut it. And rupturing the cells releases two previously separate enzymes which react together to produce the volatile gas on contact with air. It evolved as a chemical defense against animals biting into the bulb. And you went for B.
I went for B.
And you were right. Unfortunately,
I am the ultimate fact or fiction winner.
And I made a mistake because I left out the eye aspect, I think, didn't I? If I'd have left the eye aspect in there, it might have got you on the first one.
That's it, because I'm always trying to sift through to what makes sense if you have to let out. And I thought if you cover your eyes, they wouldn't water. So it couldn't be the sinuses.
No.
And there was all of that complicated stuff, which could have completely thrown me off. And then it came down to the eyes versus sinuses.
Well, because calcium oxalate crystals are real.
Yeah.
They do occur in some plants, including rhubarb. But onions contain no significant calcium oxalate. And the crystal shatter mechanism is just made up, basically. So, but it's a real compound from plant biology transplanted into the wrong plant, which is what I tried to trick you with. So the synpropylethyl S oxide is genuinely absent until you cut it, and then the two enzymes combine.
That is really interesting, that basically that kind of burning onion sensation is literally only produced at the moment that you cut it or like break it or anything. You get that kind of onioniness. It's not there until that moment.
No, and it was identified first, I think, in Japan in 2002, that it's the combination of those two enzymes, because otherwise the kind of, I suppose the myth is that it's because of sulfuric acid. That's generally the reason touted for the crying, but it's not.
But it's wrong. Okay, well, we're putting fact or fiction to bed for now at 14.9. Well, we'll be sure to come up with something new and exciting to introduce. Might need to give us a few weeks to really plan what that is, but watch this space. You can also write in and let us know what you think we should replace fact or fiction with. You can email us. You can email us hello@homegrownpod.com. You can send us a message on the new WhatsApp. The WhatsApp number, if you'd like to send us a message there, is 07999 548 073. I'll say that again. 07999 548 073.
And you can send us a text-based message. You can send us pictures. You can send us a voice note. But just make sure that you're happy with us playing the voice note potentially in the episode.
Exactly.
So keep it PG.
Indeed.
Thank you very much for watching or listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Hope you enjoyed the harvest hacks, and see you next time.